Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Mindful LCA podcast. We changed the name. I shortened it, right? I already did that just for so you guys are find it easier. Now it's just Mindful Space LCA. LCA is love, change, and acceptance. I think it'll make it a lot easier for people to find it instead of having to type the whole thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
Mindful LCA on Spotify now and Mindful LCA on YouTube. We just changed the name. That'll make it easier for you guys to find. How are you doing today, Norma?
I am a little nervous about the episode today just because it is a topic that I'm still learning a little bit and that I don't necessarily completely understand, so it will be that's a vulnerable statement there, so bear with me. Just bear with me today.
Yeah, I mean that's understandable, right? Like we said, at some point, everything is always changing, and new information is coming out. So nothing is set in stone. Nothing is the end all be all, and even nothing of what we say needs to be the end all be all or anything. So that's important to keep that in mind.
Yes.
Yeah, that's completely acceptable.
How are you?
I am do. I always like to say good, but then I'll follow up with it. Um, just realize how much in love I am with learning.
I
Like
like that.
learning is like the fucking thing that makes me happy. Is a thing that makes me excited. Is a thing that I love learning the most. Like of love doing the most. I think the times where I feel stagnant and like even when I used to be like depressed or when I get like sad and all that shit is because I feel like I'm not doing anything. And once I'm learning and it just keeps me like interested in that. Um for example, what was it that I learned? I had a conversation with some people that needed to be had. I feel, and then I learned about the approach and what is it, right? And what I learned, if I can share it with you, just really
Of
quick,
course.
it's how much the ego has to do when you're telling somebody that they might be the one that are making a mistake, right? So I've kind of pointed out some things to people, and like the reaction is always like, "Nah, not this, like fuck that, not that," and then I'm paying attention. It's like, "Oh, okay." I can see now after the conversation is done that it's hard for people to accept that they might be doing something wrong or that they're playing a role in the situation or that, right? So then from
Yeah.
there, I was like, oh, for next time, I need to change probably that approach to not feel so they don't feel attacked, somehow make it make more sense without making the people feel attacked. That was one day. And then the next day, talking to my grandma, she's telling stories about her grandparents and shit like that. And then I'm like, oh, damn, I really come from I was telling my dad, I was like, we really come from a fucking people that were super wealthy and like fucking colonizers of Mexico. Like if you went back enough and they're talking about all this fucking money and all this stuff and having endless amount of land and fucking businesses and all this shit and working for major corporations in the early 1900s is like, oh yeah, so definitely my my lineage, my ancestors come from wealthy fucking people in Spain. um and yeah, that was crazy. So you just kind of like put it together. And that's one thing that I love, like just talking about my grandma about, because you learn shit about things that I never really thought about. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's my thing, and I've noticed that before, but just yesterday I made a notice like, god damn, I fucking love learning things. Like it's always cool to just do that. But yeah, all right, I'll read it this time. Our goal is to create a safe space for exploring mental health topics, sharing stories, and learning strategies for well being, fostering empathy, understanding, growth, and most importantly, love. And email is mindfulpodcastliving@gmail.com for concerns, for questions, for topics, if you want to be a guest. And don't forget the podcasts go out every Monday. We're gonna start calling it Mental Health Monday, like I used to, so people get in the habit of remembering that it's Monday, and you associate the podcast with the Monday. So yeah, every Monday at 5 a.m. it comes out. So when you wake up on Mondays, you'll have a new podcast to listen to. All right. So today we're talking about feelings.
Feelings.
We're talking about feelings. What you got? What you got? Hit us with it.
So the very first episode that we had, we focused a lot on emotion.
Hmm.
And we also talked about the subjective experience that comes with emotion. So, um, as I was researching more about it, I am realizing that while we use emotions and feelings as interchangeably, they're not necessarily the same thing.
Mm.
Um, so that is something that I'm still trying to grasp and understand how they are similar but different. So that is why I said today I'm like, bear with me because I'm also learning here with you.
Well, see, now that you're
Um
teaching me something new. See, there you go.
Woo! You didn't know that either?
No, I didn't. I always used them, like you said, interchangeably. It was just emotions and feelings kind of were the same thing. I just used either word.
Yes. So last time with emotions we used the APA or American Psychological Association's definition of emotion, and now we're going to do the same with feelings. And so feelings, they are defined as self-contained phenomenal experience. Feelings are subjective. I don't even know how to say this word.
Evaluative.
Evaluative,
Hmm.
and independent of the sensations, thoughts, or images evoking them. So I was like, what? Excuse me,
Hmm.
what? Can you explain that? So the more and more I looked into it, it's the and we mentioned it on the emotions one of like the subjective meaning that we give to the different sensations, images that our brain gives us. So if we take it back to like for example with you with anxiety, right? Like that is something that you had experienced, and a lot of people experience anxiety. So the physiological part of it or the emotional part, many people feel that. Now, your anxiety might be about dying, having a heart attack, going out of the house and having a panic attack, like all of those things. Whereas maybe the anxiety for somebody else is going to be about getting into a car accident, getting sick, not finding a life partner, whatever the case may be. And while they are both anxiety, that is um, the um what's the word I'm looking for? Consensus or the same emotion you might be experiencing. The subjective part of it, the feeling is different because everybody has a different experience. So they are shaped by bias, by culture, mental core beliefs, misconceptions that we might have. So we'll get into it a little bit
Hmm.
more. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. I kind of get what you're saying. I think it wasn't explained to me like this when I was going to therapy, but it was more of like for example, the heart attack thing was like, and everybody can or different people can feel different like pain on their chest, but what you do with that feeling is what ultimately impacts how you continue to feel, right? Like kind of you can get triggered by the chest pain, and if you don't say if like if you think I'm gonna have a if you think I'm gonna have a heart attack, then you're going to get super stressed out. You're going to have a high level of anxiety. If you kind of have like a little bit of a worry about it, then you might get stressed for a little bit and like tune out from the TV episode or whatever you're watching. Or the other one be like you don't pay any attention to it all. Does that make kind of sense? Right, it's kind of like what you're getting to might be kind of like what you do with the emotion. Or I guess in a simple way, would it make sense to just say the emotion is the physiological part of it?
Yes, I think the way I understood it was the emotion is more of the physiological part. We had talked about how it lasts 90 seconds, right? So we're talking about the when the information comes in to where like we flush out all of the chemicals all of our body, that is
Hmm.
the actual emotion. The meaning that we give to that, the subjective experience that we had talked about prior, is the feeling. So if we maybe right now I experienced earlier when I told you like I'm nervous, right? So maybe I feel that a little bit on my throat. There's a sensation in my throat, and I don't even know if you can hear it, but I feel my voice is different because I'm nervous right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I feel the like a raspy sensation on my throat. My heartbeat is a little bit more rapid. Um, those are physical sensations. So
Mm-hmm.
that is what the emotion is. When I label it and I say, holy shit, I am nervous because I don't feel like the expert today during
Mm-hmm.
this podcast episode, that's the feeling. I feel nervous because I'm not an expert.
Mm.
I'm
So like,
feeling I'm
so
feeling
tell,
like nervous.
so is it kind of then the why that we give to the feeling? You can just also say that.
Yeah, yeah. So like that is part of the subjective experience of
Mm-hmm.
um, part of my belief is as a psychotherapist, I'm supposed to know it all. So that is the part of my belief or my the culture, right? Of the Western, because I have an education, higher education, that must mean that I have to be the expert and I have to have all my shit together. My own belief of like, in order for me to have credibility, I need to know everything. So if I'm not an expert in this topic, like the feelings, making that differentiation, then that was what I take it as like, oh, I'm nervous because I'm not an expert. So that is the part of the subjective experience. I forgot what your question was. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. It was the same thing, something along those lines. So just kind of how I was making sense, how I was feeling about it, right? I was feeling about what you're saying, but yeah, that makes sense. That's interesting though, because I like going back to it, like I never thought as a separate thing, but I feel like it'll be very helpful, or I see it helpful already to kind of separate them, and you can see how they could be different, and they're different in that. Yeah, this makes complete sense. Okay, go ahead.
Um so again, going back to this part of our perceptions really shape how we interpret the feeling, and it can be based on past memories, culture, beliefs, anything that makes us who we are, that has been part of our lived experience. That is what's going to shape our the feelings um, that we have. So, for example, I have been, and I've mentioned this in past episodes, how I've been in like 7 car accidents.
Hmm.
So for me, being on the freeway, there's a lot of emotional reaction, right? Physical sensations that come about because of my lived experiences with car accident. Somebody that maybe hasn't had that will w- if that we were both in a car and had maybe like a similar physiological reaction, they would be like, oh shit, I got maybe uh I don't know what word I could use, but um I was surprised by a car that like suddenly moved into my lane. They're like
Hmm.
surprised because I wasn't expecting that, but they haven't been in a car accident, so to them it's like I was just surprised. I wasn't expecting that. For me, if somebody were to just like suddenly change into my lane without letting me know and signal, I'm not gonna be like that's a physical reaction. Is surprise to me is like holy shit, I'm about to die and be in a car accident. So
Mm.
again, I may be feeling anxious, I may be feeling unsafe, I may be feeling in danger. So even though we are both humans that experience a fact, which is a car came into our lane, the feeling that we're going to experience, the meaning that we're going to give it is going to be very different because of our lived experiences.
Mm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Um, so I don't know if you've encountered situations like that where maybe both. And I think maybe in a past episode we had talked about how you were at a restaurant and was it Aaliyah or Mia, one of your babies that you're watching the UFC fight and
Oh
one of
yeah.
the fighters got elbowed and the eyebrow got cut open, right?
Hmm.
So maybe the reaction that you both had was very very different because maybe you have been exposed to more open wounds than your baby. So for her, her feeling and your feeling were very different, even though you experienced like the same stimuli looking
Mm.
at the same thing.
Mm. That makes sense. Yeah, just realize. Yeah, I'm just trying to like still wrap it makes sense, but it's like new information, so I'm still trying to like wrap my head around it and put it together, you know. But I just see it as like, yeah, that's, I guess, everybody feels the same emotions, but then how we handle the feelings or what understanding we have of the feelings is what actually ends up lingering and affect. Would you say it affects us even more than the actual emotion, right? Because if we experience all of them, then the key is how we're handling the feelings that the emotion makes us feel, then, right? Or how are we perceiving the feeling that has, would you say that it has more, power or more, I don't know if it would be importance is the right word, because I feel like, well, then do you not think that then a lot of the work that you do is handling the feelings then more than the actual like emotion?
When you say the work that I do, are you talking about like as a person, as a therapist?
As
What
a
are you talking
therapist,
about
yeah, as a
as a
therapist,
therapist?
like, do
That's a
you
good
think then
question.
you're dealing more with the, with how the person reacts and the feeling that they give to their emotions or the situations then? Because I know both of them are important, right? Like we talked about emotions, it's
Mhm.
important to feel it, it's important to understand what's happening. But then do you think most of the people then you work on that other part, on the, or not most, but like the, a lot of the work is done also in how you interpret it and how do you go with that?
I think it's a little bit of both because a lot of people, and I think this is one of the things that we had talked about in the first episode of there is this big disconnect that happens as we grow older. We don't know what to do with the both the emotion and the feeling, so we start to shut that shit out.
Mm,
So then a lot of my clients, when I'm talking and we've talked about how I am a very emotionally focused therapist, when I see a reaction in the room, I see a shift in their body language or whatever the case may be, and I bring attention to it. I bring awareness of like, hey, I noticed something just happened. What just happened? And sometimes they can be like, "Oh, I'm sad or I'm angry or I feel uncomfortable." And as soon as I ask, "Where in your body is this discomfort? Where in your body is this sad?" They're like, "What? What what do you mean?" Like, "Yeah, where in your body is the sadness?" And they're like, "In my head?" And I'm like, "What do you mean in your head?" Like, "Yeah, like I know I'm sad." "Okay. How do you know you're sad?" And they're like, "I don't feel it in my body." Like, "So then how do you know you're sad?" Like, "'Cause I know it here." And I'm like, "Yeah, but what tells you in here that you're sad?" Trying to bring it back to the body. So there is a lot of that disconnect already from not being able to even sit with the emotion, which is the physiological reaction that our body has. Many clients don't even know how to do that.
mm,
So I have to bridge gaps and a client specifically that I'm thinking of, I'm working with him as in a couple capacity. So we've been working together for almost more than 2 years now. And just now, just recently, because I'll be like, okay, what's coming up for you? And he would immediately go into like how you deal with the feeling, and he'll be like, I want to get out of here. I want to get out of here. I want to get out of here. That is his protection, right? I need to get out of here. But what is it that you're protecting? He's like, I don't know. It's I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Like for the longest time it was I don't know. So then I'm like, what's it? What's showing up in your body? And a lot of the times it was also like, I don't know. To then where we were able to get to a place where he said, I just feel hot.
Mm.
This side of my body feels hot. Okay, cool. Are we able to label it? Then like now we are able to get to an emotion. I understand that my body's getting hot and that's it. Okay. But in order to maybe bring vulnerability into the room, we need that understanding. We need that feeling. What is it that you're feeling so that we can let your partner know? Just recently, we were able to say, when I feel hot, I'm embarrassed. And that took us 2 years plus.
Mm.
That is how much disconnect there is between both emotion and feelings. Because a
Mm.
lot of us andamos en automático, right? Like we just on autopilot and we're just going through the world, not even knowing, making sense of both our emotions and our feelings. So earlier you were saying like, so is it more of how we deal with the emotion? I'm like, well, I think most of us know, quote unquote, how we deal with stuff, right? Like he knew how to deal with it at the beginning when something uncomfortable would come about. He's like, I just want to leave. So we know how we deal with it, but we don't even know what we're dealing with. We have
Mm.
no idea what emotion, we have no idea what feeling. We just know that it's fucking uncomfortable and we gotta go.
Mm. That makes sense.
So that is why it's also very important to talk about what emotion is coming up, physiological reaction, and what feeling am I attaching to it. So then I know why I do what I do. And
Yeah.
even if it's working, if it's not, so we can then have a more functional mm, action to that emotion and feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot of the things that they taught me with the cognitive behavioral therapy. It was like more leading with that stuff, right? It was a lot of that. Um, because I think what was happening with me then, there was the opposite of being hyper aware of the stuff, right? Like, oh, my I feel the heat and I'm like, shit, here comes another thing. Here comes another
Mhm.
panic attack. Here comes this because I feel the body getting hot, leading by like the stomach turning and shit. And then next thing I know, it was the feeling of like, okay, I gotta get up and move. Like I gotta get up and move and start pacing and doing all that stuff. So it was like I became like hyper aware of that stuff and became gave it the feeling of like, oh, this is bad. Whatever this heat is bad. This stomach turning is bad because something bad is gonna happen. And here we go again. And then I gave it that feeling. And I think
Mhm.
the process of eliminating that feeling or changing that feeling and not saying this necessarily feels like it's a bad thing, or doesn't necessarily mean that this is a bad thing, and accepting it maybe when it's needed or that it's a normal reaction, helped me change the feeling to then just working on that acceptance part that also didn't that hasn't triggered the the nervousness and the heat or the stomach turning to be like, oh, it's a full-blown panic attack. It's just be like, now it's a signal that said there's something there, like something is off, catching it like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
just to making sense of it, I think that's the big part of it, right? Like I think we still, or some people that I know, you just get the emotion and the feeling that it gives you, and then I think you jump into like the ultra negative, like you give it a very bad, uh you think of the worst as soon as you feel that. You don't counter it, don't balance it, don't try to think, I guess, if it would be more logically or whatever it might be. um I saw somewhere that you learn a lot when you're curious, and I don't let it slide, right? Like since ever since I learned that, and it makes sense, and I try to tell my girls that. So I chat GPT, I talk to it like it was my friend almost on a daily basis. uh so I looked it up. right now and see what how it explains it. Right. So I'll read it along. I just put what's the difference between feelings and emotions. Let's see if it's correct or what it has on the knowledge. I believe now it's like active because at some point ChatGPT was like stopped into like a certain year, so it didn't have like active data. But I think now it like it's active, where it's like meaning that it's like current with whatever new information it might be given now. Emotions are complex psychological states that involve three distinct components: subjective experience, a psychological response, and a behavioral or expressive response. And feelings are the conscious, subjective experience of emotions. They are mental associations and reactions to emotions and can be influenced by personal experience, beliefs, and memories. Example of emotion would be happiness, sadness, anger, fear, surprise, and disgust. And examples of feelings would be anxious, content, disappointed, or affectionate. What do you think? Does that help? Does it make sense?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Um, the part of and one way that as I was looking up information around it was that, and we in another episode make a note of talking about downstairs brain and upstairs brain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with your downstairs brain, that is your primitive brain. So that is where the emotions live. So it's like a very physiological part of us.
Mm-hmm.
The upstairs brain is more of the part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, which knows the logic, the where language lives. So that is the la razón, like the rational
Reason.
thinking
Mm-hmm.
is there, the reasoning. So emotions are more of like the physiological, the instinctual part, and the feelings require you to have some type of raciocinio, reasoning.
Mm. Let me type this
So
up.
so babies have more of emotions because they don't really have the language, they don't really have the reasoning to be like, "Oh, I'm feeling whatever the thing." Oh, hold on, my computer's
Mm.
about to die.
Yeah.
Um whereas us adults, we do have that ability because again, we have lived experiences, we have created beliefs, etc., etc.
Mm. Yeah, I jumped into the example scenario. So it's saying emotion. You see a snake and experience the emotion of fear. Your heart rate increases and you might jump back. That's the emotion part. And the feeling says you then interpret this emotional response and think, I feel scared or I feel anxious. The other example with anger and resentment was the emotion is anger. The scenario, somebody cut you off in traffic. Physiological responses increase heart rate, muscle tension, and adrenaline rush. Behavioral responses yelling, honking the horn, feeling a surge of frustration. And the feeling that you feel is resentment. Um, Later, you think about the incident and feel a lingering resentment towards reckless drivers. The conscious experience is feeling bitter, holding a grudge, recalling the event with negative emotions. So that makes complete sense, right? I can give you another one because it did a good job of like just doing it with different things. With fear and anxiety, the scenario is you hear a loud noise at night while alone at home. The physiological response is a rapid heartbeat, shallow breathing, and heightened alertness. Behavioral experience is freezing, looking around, feeling a sudden rush of adrenaline. The feeling is anxiety. The scenario after the noise stops, you remain anxious and worry about potential dangers. The conscious experience is feeling uneasy, nervous, and constantly on edge, even though the immediate threat has passed. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that makes complete sense, right?
Yes.
That makes complete sense about the feeling is what we do with it, what you do with the emotion. How do you respond? How do you perceive the
Mhm.
emotion and what
Mhm.
the attachment that you're giving it, right? That's
Yes.
very cool. That makes a lot of sense. So then it's, well, for me it was working on the feeling of the thing that helped me out, right?
Mhm.
So like
Mhm.
working on the feeling that I was getting of it, and saying, well, not being so afraid of the anxiety or of the panic and stuff, and not giving it such a terrible, horrible meaning, right? Because I remember my therapist telling me, well, like, did, I don't remember if he told me like this, but this is how I just remember, or how I interpret it. Still, was like, well, did you die? Like, no, right? So then remember that you survived it.
But
Remember,
did
you
you die?
already you experienced it. It felt like shit and it felt terrible, but you survived it. So then, therefore, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is you're gonna feel
Mhm.
like this. You already been through the worst. So why is it such a bad thing already? You already went through the worst case scenario. So like, what's the worst that can happen? You already did it. So it's like, oh shit, that makes sense. Which kind of like eliminated the fear, like little by little, to be like, oh yeah, I already know. Eliminated the very heightened feeling of doom, of like, fucking, oh my god, it's the end of the world. I was like, oh, you know what, you're right. So it was working on the attachment and the feeling that I gave to the emotion of anxiety. I
Yes.
like it. I like it, Picasso. It makes sense. It makes sense.
I like that we're like earlier you said that you liked I'm trying to take a picture of like the sunset, not the sunset, but like the sky. It looks so pretty as I'm doing that. Sorry, I got distracted.
No worries.
Um but yes, you were trying to deal with the feeling of uh being anxious. You're constantly feeling anxious. And that is the part that you were working through. And after you gave a different interpretation to your emotions, which is like the heat, like the turning of your stomach, you were able to create a different feeling from that.
Hmm. Yeah. Give it a different. Yeah. And that's like I said, that's the key, or that was the key, at least for me, for that, partially, right? Because there's still that acceptance part, right? That like sometimes still when I get in like this freaking it hasn't happened in a while, but sometimes I catch myself in this funks, and I'm just like, oh, this, like, I am, I like to think I'm pretty aware of shit now. Like, I just know when I have like 2 3 days of shitty sleep, like my fucking anxiety just kicks up to the fucking roof. But it doesn't, once I don't give it that feeling of like, oh my god, is the thing. I'm just like, okay, I'm feeling like this, and then sometimes I just catch how I react to shit, or like I'm much more, a little bit more angry, or a little bit more upset than I usually am, and I was like, okay, this is happening. But then I don't sit there and like want to go against it. I don't battle it or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, I did have shitty sleep for like a couple days in a row. That's probably what's happening. And then it's like, okay. Then I just work on the acceptance part, right? Because that was a big thing for me. So then working, I was like, oh, you're just feeling like this. So then not giving it not forcing it, not feeling negative about it, just accept that that's how I feel. And if I take a nice nap, or once I have a good sleep the other day, then I feel better, and it does, right? Versus before that, the reaction or the feeling to whatever that emotion was is what I can see kept me in the fucking loop. What kept me still cycling, because I was so afraid of it, of feeling a little bit sad, or feeling anxious, or feeling whatever negative emotion, anger. It was just me giving it like, oh fuck, here we go again, and this means all this shit, and you did all that, and like fucking all that. So now it's just been like, oh, I'm fucking angry, I'm fucking angry, which I I made a note, right, in a mental note. I'm paying attention to that stuff. Like, I notice how my behavior, or the reaction to the feeling, is actually changing. Before, I used to get mad, and it was like, I need to solve it right now. Like right now, I need to talk about it. I need to figure it out. I need to do that, right? So it was like, yeah, anything. I'm just thinking of a specific example, like with my wife, right? I would get upset and just be like, oh, let's talk about it, this and that. And it would fucking be such a pain to hold it. Like, I would just couldn't fucking keep the emotion and like inside, and it would just like overflow. And I feel like I have to get out of it quickly now. Um, and now just recently I was upset, not at Celia, but then my wife, she comes home and she just asked me, and I'm like, nah, like just leave me alone. And then I reacted, and then I specifically told her, hey, just leave me alone. Like I'm upset right now, but I'll just let me feel it. Let me just deal with it. I'll be fine, and then I'll talk to you about it, and I will explain to why. So she was thrown off to be like, what the fuck? Like you usually just wanted to like deal with it right away. So I think the awareness for me to have to be like, oh, I'm just mad, like I'm upset
Mhm.
right now, allowed me to then not act on it, not give it such a negative thing, and just be like, well, this is how I'm feeling right now. I'm in this fucking mood, and just let me be, and then I'll freaking come back to it like a little bit when I feel better now, and then we can talk about it. So I think that's a different thing too of having the awareness and changing how I interpret that versus like now it feels much more calm, right? It doesn't feel like it's overwhelming shit where I have to like get it out and have the conversation or have the argument right then. And now it's just more a little bit more relaxed or a little bit more not contained, but understanding it more that then doesn't allow me to also give it such a negative feeling, right? Because I'm not letting
Mhm.
the thoughts fucking continue to blow the fuck off and like get me so
Mhm.
upset that I have to blow up. It's more just like, oh, I'm upset. I know what I'm upset. Okay. And then just letting it be, than necessarily that.
Yeah, and I think like ironically is what w- usually what we're trying to do is get rid of the feeling or the emotion. So we go to whatever protection we resort to. Like my client was like, I want to get the fuck out of here because he was trying to get rid of that discomfort, right? And you were like, let's talk about it right now. I want to solve it right now because I want to get rid of this anger.
Hmm.
But the more we try to distract ourselves from feeling it, is what makes it linger way longer than it needs to, right? So then when we don't accept it, like it makes it just like that is that is where the feeling like I've been feeling anxious the whole day, right? It's like that part of like that is a feeling, that is not an emotion, because an emotion is only it only lasts like 90 seconds. So that is a feeling of anxiety, and that's because of our cognition, or the thoughts are constantly there, and we're like, oh, let's not think about it, let me go on Facebook, let's not think about it, let me go to a friend's house. But we're not letting it do its thing, so it's there, we're on this loop of anxiety, 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 anxiety. Whereas if we're like, okay, my body's telling me that I'm having this emotion, what is it? I'm feeling fucking anxious right now. Okay, fuck it, let's deal with it, let's actually sit with it and see, let it take its course, right? And the more we allow that to happen and we self-soothe, the faster both the emotion and the feeling are going to go away.
Yeah. 100% I can attest to that because I'm telling you, that was the big issue with me.
Same.
I don't want to feel this. God damn it, get the fuck away from me. And then it's like, embrace that shit. So now it's like, oh, anything's happening. It's like, embrace it. Like, I think now it's I think it also helped me like in other shit. Like now when I get sick, I don't rush it. I don't take fucking Tylenols. I don't do shit. I'm just like, I'm sick. Okay, enjoy that shit. I'll enjoy the fucking sickness and it's part of the shit. And then eventually it'll go away. I don't stress out about it. Or the same thing with the car scenario, like traffic, right? Like, oh my God, this fucking traffic, and you're so rushing it, and you piss yourself off even more because you want to be home. And it's like,
Mhm.
oh, well, just fuck it. Like, you're gonna be here anyways. Just might as well enjoy it. Turn on some music, podcast, have a
Enjoy the
conversation or
ride.
some shit. Yeah. Why like forcing so much to want to fucking get there when it's not gonna
Mhm.
happen? And what what good does it do to you to get pissed off for it? So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think like I have also been trying to just be more mindful of that, of like, okay, what am I feeling right now? And once you become aware of it, the response that I have to it is very, very different from maybe a response I would have had 2 years ago. Super, super, super different. Um, yeah. So I just kind of let him be, let him do its thing. Both emotions and feelings, and whenever they're ready to go away, they're ready to go away.
Yeah,
Mm, yeah.
just like a cloud in the sky, coming and going. Be
Yes.
like a cloud in
Yeah.
the sky, or be like water and ride the wave of
The
emotions or whatever
wave.
is coming and going. A bunch of things that people make that associate things with that made sense. But that one that stood out is that like the clouds in the fucking
The
sky,
cloud.
they come and go from there. So yeah, that's very cool.
Yes. Um, to sprinkle some science there, because I know you like that. So, emotions are processed in the amygdala,
Hmm.
which is like when we're talking about like downstairs brain, upstairs brain. The downstairs brain is your amygdala, your limbic system. That is where your brain process stimuli from the environment, and the feelings are processed in our neurocortex, prefrontal cortex, where all like the logic, the thoughts, the reasoning come from. So that can also be a way to differentiate it, um, of
Mm.
where in the brain they are being processed.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
But also like the part of them being really intertwined, right? Of
Yeah.
you can't have one without the other. There was a study back in 2007 where they with mice they would fuck fuck up with their amygdala and see how that would affect them. So they when they would install fear within the rats, the response was a lot more heightened or acute than if the amygdala wasn't fucked with. And then the other one of they messed around with their neural cortex, and just the responses, their behavior, their interpretation to like whatever stimuli was different than if they didn't get get messed with. So even though they are very different things, they are things that, como decimos en español, son juntos pero no revueltos. They're they're very, very, very intertwined.
Yeah.
So that is, I think, where maybe the confusion, or where we just use the words interchangeably because of how related they are to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Something I think. Yeah. Like I personally function a lot by knowing how it works. So by having this understanding is something to keep in mind of, something that I'll look into more and just remember and try to define it, right? Because at the end of the day, my goal is to help, right? And I end up, by learning this, I help myself and I help the people around me, and that's all the fuck that I want to do. So if I can make sense of it to explain it as easy as possible, then it makes sense. And to be able to separate it and just knowing how to address somebody or myself, like I said,
Mhm.
like, oh, this is happening, is this is the emotion, or this the feeling, and then what can we do about those things, I think is important to know. Now that I know they're different things, and then, like I said, it completely makes sense. And now I'll know how to talk about it a little bit more where it makes more sense, right? I think
Mhm.
it's just, for me, it's just like in a path of understanding and simplifying shit. That is cool. I just feel like, how do I make it as basic as possible, this complicated stuff, and just see how it works for people and how it works for myself. But yeah, I like it. Good stuff.
Yeah, and the cultural piece, to it too. I don't obviously, like, I don't know how to pronounce it, but like the feelings that, um in France they have a saying where maybe you are like at a cliff, or and that sensation of wanting to like jump, or what it would be like for you to jump off the cliff, there is a way that they call it, but I'm not going to even attempt. But that's a feeling that they've like labeled,
Mm,
that here in America we don't necessarily have.
mm,
Um, and or just like also how we deal with things, for example, grief, right? And in many African cultures, it is very okay um, for them whenever they lose somebody with like the drums or music or openly cry, whereas in many European countries it's like, no, we need to keep faith, and we don't cry. So the way we interpret different um, emotions, and how we give that subjective experience to feelings, is also going to inform how we react to them, right? Of like the part of here in the United States, if somebody burps, it's like very disrespectful, right? Whereas like maybe another country in Asia, if you burp, that's a sign of like, oh, this food is very like tasty. So the feeling of feeling
the compliment.
satisfied, full, like this was a good meal.
Yeah.
So just different ways of expressing it is just being mindful of, for us as people that we accompany other humans in their healing journey, maybe how I deal with grief with a Black person, a Mexican person, African person, a United States person is going to be very different than mm, all of them together, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that reminds me of my intercultural communications class in college, which was one of my favorite classes. Like everything is, she the way she explained it is like the culture is the glasses which you see the
Hmm.
world through, right? Like that's, I
Yes.
remember how she explained it. So like everybody sees it differently based on their culture, and it's just like you put it on glasses. That's what makes it different and unique to everybody. That everybody sees it through that. So yeah, the same thing like you said. The one is the burping, or I did one of my projects with somebody from Iran, and then was like the thumbs up. Like you don't do thumbs up. That's like the same as the middle finger in Iran or something like that.
Mm.
So yeah, it was interesting to see that, and it just helps you kind of look at your own culture and see, right? And once again, for me, is the why, right? It's just so
Hmm.
interesting. That's what one of my favorite classes on, like, why do we do the things that we do? It's like, oh, our culture is this or that, which then opens you, I think, to um, different experiences, to different cultures, to different reasonings, and just opens up your mind to be like, well, my way is not the only way, or my way might not be the right
Hmm.
way. So you just become more open minded by learning about other cultures. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
That's all I got.
Cool. That works. Not every episode is going to be 3 hours. It needs to be what it needs to be.
I got through that.
Good stuff. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and just like everything, just to put a thing on it, like I was, like we mentioned in the other podcast, all this shit is like relatively new. I think it's like 40 years or something, or around that time, where there actually people are paying an effort and putting effort into mental health, at least from
Mm,
um, the European colonialist perspective, right? Who knows what was there before and what got damaged
yes.
and what got ripped apart before that stuff. So everything is new. Everything will change. Just trying to give you, see, I didn't think you're doing a service. You're bringing us the latest news and different perspectives and the feeling and emotion stuff. So that's
Yes.
cool. Yeah. So thank you for doing that. And yeah,
Yeah.
just keep it like that. Switching to a little bit of current event. Current events are turning very political, and not all of them are going to be political, by the way. But here's another one on the politics, just to catch up on the stuff.
Shit.
So, since last time we talked, Biden stepped down, and now is Kamala Harris leading the Democratic Party. How do you feel?
It's really tough because um I don't I don't think Kamala is necessarily any different than Joe. And she's a woman. She's a woman of color. She's already not liked by a lot of Democratic or liberal people. The She's a cop, right? And like the like her work in Oakland, and right, of like just the like she's very pro prison. So I'm just like, fuck, dude. It almost seems that they're like, I saw a meme that says like Joe dropping from the brace is it equals to working out 3 days before prom or homecoming or something like that.
Mm,
And I'm like, yes, that's literally how it feels. I don't know what the fuck the Democratic Party was thinking about the moment they were like, yeah, Joe, yeah, like, you're gonna be our candidate, because that was a bad move. And I don't know what they were thinking in their privileged ass minds that it was going to work, but they saw like, really. And after the attempted assassination on Trump and how much popularity that brought him, they're like, oh shit, now we need to figure something out like really, really quick. But I genuinely don't think that is going to work. I genuinely don't think it's going to work. I don't think she's a good candidate.
mm.
What about you?
Well, I don't know if I'm like being overly positive, but I'll I like to think it's a win for us that we pressure them enough to change something, right?
Agreed.
Like I like to say it's good that you guys knew that you were gonna lose because this fucking president like Biden hasn't been doing good and hasn't been has all the obviously the face of all the things that's happening in Palestine and all the other things. It's like, well, yeah, this is not working out, and people were very vocal about it. So they're like, yeah, we have to do something because we're gonna lose. We have to do something because this is not working. So that thing to me when I saw the change, I was like, oh, seems like they listened, whether they wanted to or not. Like they have to try something else. The response that I'm seeing on social media based on the fucking algorithm that I know is pretty much catered to me
Hmm.
is a positive one. I'm seeing people that were saying I kind of just have to vote for Biden, be more open and like more. I see more people being happier with Kamala than Biden. Like for some reason, just the face, like they're not attaching the war to her, right? They're not doing that. They're not attaching all those things. And that idea of just having somebody like the fucking bar is so low that having somebody to have any kind of competency is enough, right? Which is not necessarily a good thing. And now I kind of feel like with the whole thing we talked about Mexico, right?
Mm.
Like how much is
Here's the
the
thing though. Yes, I see what you're talking about. And there was already a woman candidate here in the States who was fucking white,
Mhm.
and the United States didn't want her anyway. What makes you think that they're gonna want a woman and a black woman?
Yeah, that was the initial concern, right? As soon as I heard it, it was like, oh well, we'll see if like because the issue would be the 60 something year old middle of nowhere white people that are they gonna be okay with voting for a woman and a black woman, right? That's the concern, right? That's probably
Mhm.
gonna see how much is that gonna if that's gonna if they're gonna vote for that or they're gonna stick with Trump out of just the the fact that he's a guy, right? Like that's also a big issue, and we'll see where the country is on that shit. Um, I don't know. I mean, it's still obviously the same thing is still like It's not the right one. And I hate thinking that it's okay because it's the better candidate out of the both, because I know that doesn't really create any change, right? But
Mm-mm.
I'm also aware that the danger of Trump winning is. So it's unfortunate that we have to settle for two shitty people. But then again, the alternative is what? In actuality, if those are your choices, who would you rather have? Who do you think that our people are going to be less in danger with? If you want to put that as the most basic thing to it, right? I know both of them are going to be shit, but like one of them, as the second term, as you know, second term presidents don't give a fuck anymore. They really go after what they want to do because they don't have to win again. So if he was withholding himself at all from doing what he wanted to do because he knows that there could be a second term, you know, so then what is he gonna do? What is he gonna do if he already did a lot of crazy shit when he was there? What is he gonna do with that? So it's more like putting a little bit of the hope to her wanting to win, although she is not nowhere near perfect in what we said. But then I go back into the argument. Was like, well, who the fuck is? At what point is everybody gonna be happy with whoever the fuck is the president? Like that's
And
a
I think,
very thing hard to
a-
do.
and maybe like that's where eh, I don't know if it's feasible. I want to think it is feasible, but that would mean like a lot of fucking like revolting, right? Of like just because even if we talk about, oh, like guys, make sure y'all vote, um like because of the electoral college, how it works, it's even if all of us here in this side of the state say like, yeah, we want Kamala to win, but the our electoral college person's like, yeah, but I'm gonna vote for Trump, right? Of like just the system itself, how it is in place right now, it's not fucking working. It's not meant for you. It's not meant for me. It is not meant other than why motherfucking rich people. Like that's what the system was created, who the
Mhm.
system was created for. So let's go on to a fucking revolution.
It,
We need an
put it like this.
uprising.
Put it like this. It'll be easier for your dad to go to therapy than it is for the United States to go into a revolution where people are spread up. I can put it to you like that. Like that's
Now,
I
I
find it
I
more
I get
feasible
that,
for that.
and that is the place, and that's exactly
That's
because, and that's where we need to also account for our privilege, right? Because my little brother, him and I were having a conversation about this over the weekend, because that is when this happened, and he was like, people are too comfortable here, sister, because he's like, we literally need to like uprise. There needs to be an uprising, but we have so much privilege here, because that would mean stop fucking buying things, stop fucking supporting all of the big businesses, right? But that would require us to go into fucking discomfort, and people are not fucking willing to do that. And we're
yeah.
not. We're not. Because I much rather be able to just go across the street to fucking Whole Foods than to actually go look for a farmer and to buy myself some fucking tomatoes.
Yeah.
I
That's
much
part
rather go into Amazon and buy something that is like fucking comfortable for me than live without whatever it is that I don't fucking need, right? So we are, that is why it's so much easier for us to like sit here and be like you and I right now, we are in this place of privilege of like, oh yeah, she's not good, yes she is good, like what better option do we have? Because we are seated here in a very privileged place, where if you go across the world, like what we talked about, Sudan, Congo, Palestine, like South America, and we ask those people, they don't have that fucking luxury. They have nothing else but to fucking revolt and to like fight against their oppressor. Because even if we are oppressed here, we're comfortable enough.
yeah, just give you enough of it for you not to really say anything or fight
Yeah.
anything.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a big It's a big task. It's a lot of shit to do. The issue with is with it at the same time. It's like how much is it that they don't want to be uncomfortable versus the fact that they don't need to, like they don't know that this is what's happening, right? It's like, to bring it back to mental health, is like you don't know that there's something wrong with it. How the fuck do I get you to act different or think different or to change
Mhm.
behaviors or change thought patterns or fucking look at yourself and analyze yourself when you literally don't have anything of that? So then it's like a whole lot of work has to go into getting like the dormant fucking thing, right? Because I think that's the big issue. Like somehow we're the individual, I think
Individualism.
worrying about yourself, and then the capitalistic thing just keeps you busy, right? And then the media keeps you busy. So then all those things are out the window, where you don't actually think about the bigger picture, right? You can't afford to give a fuck about anything else when you have two jobs and you have to feed your kids and you have all this shit. So then you can't even think about that, or the systematic oppression of all this shit. So it's like a big task. Um, to get people to do that. Now, yeah, that we are we doing it by having these conversations and putting them in the fucking podcast? Like I think we are. Are we doing it by having conversations with people and being honest about the shit? I think we are. It's just I don't know what the fuck it will take for it to be that big of a change. Like it needs to
Mhm.
be something, and maybe also a thought that crossed my mind. Maybe that's what was happening if they kept both of them there, if they kept Trump and Biden. Like enough people were gonna be pissed off where something was gonna happen, because I think people on the other aspect of us, right, like the more conservative Republican people, are also not happy with Trump. Like you have to remember those crazy ass far right people are the ones that are fully with them, but someone more in the middle, but it's also not happy. So then you had a big chunk of the people in the middle not being happy with the situation, and that's also not good for both of them, Republicans or Democrats. It's like
Mhm.
that could have been the issue. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I'm okay with taking the little wins. And I see that, like I said, as him stepping down as a win, and like if she does a little bit better, or we just I don't have to live under the threat of Trump, then I'll take that. You get me? I'll take that stuff. I'll take that. The other thing is like, and I'm also like open to realizing, like I said, to learning, and I'm also open to learning that this thought process is wrong for whatever reason, and I'm always wanting to grow and whatever. You yourself don't give more money away and donate more of your time than you can't give out, and you always take care of yourself first, right? I take care of myself before I can give more. Like if I can donate money, if I can donate time, I take care of myself. I take care of myself. I take care of myself, right?
Yes. Mhm.
And you don't go above and beyond. You don't put yourself and fucking in a one in a studio to be able to give as much as you can to other people, or and even if you were in a studio, you're not going to get yourself kicked out of the thing, because you somehow you have to worry about yourself and protect yourself. Like I said, and I could be wrong about this, why is the thing of Palestine such a big key to worry about and judge what she does or what she doesn't do with that, when you still have to take care of this first? Like you get me? It's a privilege within itself to care about them over there. But how are we not also worrying about taking care of ourselves? Because like I said, we don't do that. You can feel it, but you don't go bend over backwards yourself to judge that. Because if she loses, and the rhetoric is that she's no different than Biden, and if she continues to get pushed away and like talk shit by super liberal people like myself, if she loses because of that, because they keep making comparisons to her, what the fuck is going to happen to us in the meanwhile? What's gonna be our reality with Trump as in the presidency? What's gonna happen to us? So if she loses because she's getting pressure about the stuff that's happening in the world, what is going to happen to us in the meanwhile? What is going to happen to you, to me, to my family, because of the way that we look at, because of where I live, because of all that stuff? What's going to happen to us in the meanwhile? So that's the shit I don't know. Like, I thought about it really quickly, but that just like the concern again would be, and the fear is like, what the fuck is Trump gonna do when he has no limits and he has nothing to worry about and he wins and he can just do whatever the fuck he wants? What is that? How is that gonna affect us here?
I
So
don't
like,
think
I would be
you're gonna
upset.
like.
I would be
I don't think
upset if
you're
she
gonna like my
loses because
answer.
of that and do that. No, go ahead. That's what I said. I'm open. I'm open to it, right? Like anything else, is just open to the conversation.
Because we have been in a place of so much complacency, so much comfort, so much privilege, we haven't cared enough to act before. Literally, our actions or lack thereof have gotten us to where we're at. If Trump wins, it's our fault. It's our fault as a fucking society. So if all of that you're talking about happens, right? Like where yeah, there's going to be a lot of like chaos here within the country. Maybe that is what we're needing. And maybe that will make people actually fucking get up in arms and actually do something because I think before all of this, that is one of the good things about social media that has brought up so much light to this. Before, we nos valía madre. I can say that for myself too, because like I said, like I didn't have to worry. My family wasn't threatened, quote unquote. So now there is that like that fear of like holy shit, if Trump wins, there's going to be a lot of motherfucking changes that are like really going to affect our people or mostly everybody other than the white rich man, and he's going to come like I don't give a fuck about you, even Republicans, because he's going to just make shit to benefit him. um maybe that is what we are needing.
You have a lot more faith in people than I do. I think that the shit could literally be collapsing and like all this thing would be happening and they'll be blaming blacks and Mexicans and drag
I'm
queens.
not saying that I have faith in that.
I mean, I'm
Maybe
just,
that I say maybe that is what we're needing, right?
yeah.
I think we something needs to fucking change, and for that, and change has never come from a place of like, yeah, let's sit here and talk about it. Let's have conversations. Not once. Not fucking once.
Yeah, I just, I don't know. I don't know how, if people are not outraged by now, I don't know what the fuck needs to happen and how they will still manage to twist it and support him and what people will do to that. Like, I just, my perspective at the end of the day, like I'm telling you, I think has from less fucking faith. And I also think at the end of the day of like the cost, right? Like if we're talking about shit like absolutely hitting the fan, and let's say it can happen the other way because the ultra rights are gonna be super pissed off at a black woman being the president, right? So then regardless of who wins, there could be shit hitting the fan in either way. And just think of the the possible violence, right? Regardless of what happens, the possible damage and the shit in either direction. And if some other kind of civil war was to happen, stuff is like a lot of death, a lot of pain, a lot of damage, and a lot of shit for the thing to happen. And who knows what the fuck will happen, you know? And that's still thinking that people enough people care, because I think once again I keep thinking it about it as the same way. As many people as you think are aware of their mental health, there's as many people are aware of the social fucking the social stuffs that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you had to depend, Like it's as like I just think about it, I ask myself that fucking question. If I had to depend and do that shit, then like, are people don't fucking know. Like
No.
people don't know, and people, I don't know how many people will, like, how many people see the trauma slapping them on their fucking face, and they have all the consequences and all the things and all that, and they don't fucking wake up. They don't see it. They don't fucking understand it. They're not aware to it, no matter what the fuck is happening to them. So then, yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying. It's just like I will still think like Trump wins, he'll fuck shit up, and people will still be the same. Like people will be pissed. Some people get waken up, a small percentage, and then the media and then how they run the shit is still gonna twist it in some way that does it. So it goes back to the same shit. It might be fucked, and like I said, only the younger generation is the ones that I have hope on. Just from the shit I see around my life, and like I said, through my lens and my perspective. But other than that, it's just like I just gotta control what I can control. It's much easier for me to just fucking be like, oh, this is happening. Like I said, I need to get the fuck out of this country. I need to do something else. What can I do to protect myself and my girls and my wife from that? Do I have to? A lot of people, yeah, I just don't see how continuing to stay and continuing to do that stuff will create such a change that eventually something happens. I just don't have that kind of hope anymore because I've been saying this shit and I've been wanting shit to happen, and you see continuous things happen. And like I told you, like I can turn it off. I can turn off the caring about the social injustices that are happening just for the sake of my fucking sanity. I can turn them off and I can choose sometimes not to give a fuck. But I just really have no, it's hard for me to have hope on anything changing radically. And I don't see happening where something happens, some change happens quickly. And that's the actually the only way that things change, like you're saying. Nothing really changes through voting, nothing changes through all that stuff. It needs to be like hardcore changing, but it's a very, very, very steep uphill battle to
Yes.
fight, to try to convince and to get people to understand how that happens. Because you have people literally suffering by the things that he does, rooting for him.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. Very complicated stuff.
Yes. Let us know, y'all, what you think, what your opinion is on this whole presidential, governmental
It's very hard.
bullshit.
Yeah,
Um,
it's hard to see that shit.
yes. Reach out to us.
Sad ending to the episode.
I
Mindful,
know.
mindful
Reach out
podcast living. No, I
at
mean, fucking work
gmail.com.
on yourself, work on your family, work on your community. That impacts you the most, more than any of this motherfuckers, is whoever the fuck is president. If you develop a sense of community, you work with your family, your friends, your neighbors, and all that stuff. That'll be much more important and more impactful than what anybody else fucking does outside of that.
Yeah.
And work on that shit, and that'll make more of a difference. keep keep
Yes.
keep planting seeds, keep planting fucking trees and boulders and shit like that, whatever the fuck you gotta do. Just go from there one step at a time. All right, send us an email, mindfulpodcastliving@gmail.com, like always. And remember, mental health Mondays, every Monday.
Mental
Wake your ass
health
up and listen to the podcast.
Mondays. Yes. Thank you
Subscribe,
all.
give us a rating on Spotify. You can rate us, which will help other people see it. Subscribe, put it
Yes.
in there. Even if you're just a friend of ours, turn the fucking podcast on and leave it playing. Turn the volume off. Put it on
Yes.
loop and leave it overnight. just, just to help us spread the word out, because we definitely think we're doing something good here and by having these conversations and helping people out. But
Yes.
yeah, anything else?
No, I'm gonna go eat something or whatever because this was mi cabeza me empezó a doler. Like literally, my head started hurting from this. So it's hard, but thank you all. We'll see you next Monday.
All righty. Peace.
Peace.